Welcome back to Family Story Vault. I'm Evelyn, a 69-year-old retired high school guidance counselor. For over 2 decades, I sat across from troubled teenagers and learned a crucial lesson: how to state the hard truth without ever raising my voice. People often mistook my composure for weakness. They assumed I was fragile. But by the time my own family tried to take advantage of me, they quickly realized how drastically they had underestimated my foresight. My late husband, Arthur, and I built our lives from the ground up. When he passed away 4 years ago, the house felt empty. So when my son, Mark, and his wife, Clara, invited me to live with them in their basement suite, I agreed. I sold my home, gave them $185,000 to renovate the basement and pay down their mortgage, and settled into my new routine. But I wasn't naive. On the advice of my longtime attorney, I had an official occupancy agreement drawn up and recorded with the county, securing my legal right to live there. Secretly, I also purchased a small, cozy condo under a private trust, a safety net I prayed I would never need. For 2 years, small subtle changes began to creep into our dynamic. Clara reorganized my living space without asking, made snide remarks about my spending, and occasionally excluded me from family meals. Then came the offer for a longer vacation. Clara insisted on paying to extend my annual trip to visit my sister in Arizona to 9 days. "You deserve a real break, Evelyn," she told me with a bright smile. I returned on a Thursday evening to a scene that chilled me to the bone. Stacked along the garage door were 14 cardboard boxes and 3 plastic bins containing every single piece of my life. My personal items, my clothes, even Arthur's prized antique mug had been packed away. Taped to the top box was a folded piece of paper with Mark's handwriting: "Sorry, Mom. There's no room for you here anymore." I tried my electronic keypad code at the basement door. It failed. The access code had already been changed. Sitting in my car in that driveway, staring at my life packed into cardboard, I faced a choice. I didn't cry. Instead, I started my engine and drove toward an address my family knew nothing about. But what they didn't know was that the real trap was about to spring on them. I drove straight to Aspen Court, Unit 4C, the quiet 2-bedroom condo I had purchased 2 years prior under my private trust. Standing in that quiet hallway, I slid my key into the lock. It turned effortlessly. I set Arthur's mug gently on the kitchen counter, sat on the edge of the bed, and allowed myself 10 minutes to grieve the fact that my own son was capable of discarding me. Once the kettle whistled, I poured a hot cup of tea and made a promise to myself: no more tears. First thing Friday morning, I called my attorney, legal counsel Diane. When she looked into the public property records, she uncovered something alarming. 6 weeks before my trip to Arizona, long before Clara announced her 3rd pregnancy, a title search request had been filed on Mark's home by a local bank. Clara's interior design business was drowning in unpaid contractor debts, and they were attempting to secure a $100,000 equity line of credit. The bank's only condition? The title had to be completely clear of my registered life occupancy right. They hadn't pushed me out to build a baby nursery. They had thrown me out for money. Around noon, Mark finally called my mobile phone. He didn't ask if I had a roof over my head or if I was safe. He simply asked, "Did you see the note?" "I found the boxes, Mark," I replied evenly. "Look, things are just really tight right now with the new baby coming," he stammered, offering a rehearsed excuse. I cut through his pretense. "How long have you and Clara been planning this tight situation, Mark?" Silence stretched across the phone line for 11 agonizing seconds before he faltered. I hung up before he could stumble through another lie. Later that afternoon, my daughter, Sarah, called, echoing the same rehearsed talking points about finding me a smaller, more manageable facility. It was painfully obvious that my children had discussed dividing my remaining assets behind my back. That night, I gathered my blue accordion folder, the place where I had archived every legal document, receipt, and bank statement for 30 years. Armed with independent medical reports proving my mental clarity, I prepared for the weekend. But my family was about to walk into a meeting they would never forget. By Saturday morning, the stage was set. I dressed carefully in my favorite gray cardigan and comfortable shoes, packed my blue folder into a canvas bag, and drove back to Mark's house. I was accompanied by my attorney, Diane. When we walked into the dining room at 11 a.m. sharp, the atmosphere was suffocating. Mark sat at the head of the table, unable to meet my eyes. Clara sat beside him, patting her stomach defensively. Sarah had driven in from out of town, a legal pad sitting ready in front of her. Even my late husband's brother, Gordon, was present, looking bewildered. Clara immediately took control of the room, speaking in an overly gentle, patronizing tone. She brought up a minor incident from months ago when I had briefly misplaced my car keys, subtly hinting that my memory was declining. "It's just too much right now, Evelyn," she said softly, reaching out to pat my hand. "We need to make practical choices for your own good. You're making a big deal out of nothing." I let her finish every single word. I have always believed in letting people speak until they hang themselves with their own words. Then, without raising my voice, I reached into my bag, pulled out the blue folder, and placed it firmly in the center of the table. Diane stepped in, sliding the first document forward, our notarized occupancy agreement, recorded with the county clerk. "This document grants Evelyn a permanent legal right to reside on this property," Diane stated calmly. "Changing the digital door locks and placing her belongings on the driveway constitutes an illegal eviction." Clara's face went pale. "That was just a formality," she stammered. Next, I produced a complete, independent cognitive evaluation from my physician, conducted 4 months prior, proving I was in perfect mental health. "You tried to convince everyone I was confused," I said quietly. "You should have checked if I was prepared." Finally, I laid out the bank records and county building permits. I revealed the truth in front of everyone, the business debts, the $100,000 loan application, and the fact that the nursery permit was pulled weeks before any pregnancy was announced. The room fell deathly silent as their financial scheme fell apart. But my final revelation was about to drop the floor right out from under them. Mark's face crumbled as the full weight of the evidence settled over the dining room. Clara tried to pivot, shouting angrily that I had no right to pry into their financial business. But her anger was merely panic. Mark put his face in his hands, his voice cracking. "I knew it was wrong, Mom. I was scared of losing the house, scared of failing like Dad never did. Please, you have to forgive me." I looked at my son with a mix of sorrow and clarity. "I hear your apology, Mark," I said evenly. "But knowing something is wrong and doing it anyway isn't a mistake, it's a choice. I love you, but I will never live under this roof again." I then laid out my terms. First, I would not be filing criminal charges or suing them for the $185,000, sparing my grandchildren from the fallout of a public legal battle. Second, my remaining estate had been officially restructured into an irrevocable, independent education trust strictly for my grandchildren, meaning neither Mark, Clara, nor Sarah would ever touch another dime of my money. Third, the recorded occupancy agreement would remain on the county title permanently, blocking their attempt to clear the property for extra loans. Finally, I delivered the news that left them entirely speechless. "You wrote in your note that there was no space for me here anymore," I said, looking directly at Mark and Clara. "You don't need to worry about that. I bought a home of my own 2 years ago. It's paid in full, and the key has been in my hand the entire time." The silence in the room was absolute. I closed my blue folder, stood up, and walked out of the house with my head held high. Today, I live peacefully in my condo, surrounded by birch trees, volunteering at the local elementary school. Mark sends cards occasionally, slowly trying to rebuild a bridge he burned. My daughter-in-law and daughter remain silent, but that is fine with me. I spent 23 years teaching young people to stand up for themselves. It took my own family to remind me to take my own advice. Thank you for watching Family Story Vault. If Evelyn's strength inspired you today, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of resilience.